Welcome to the Feral Minds Podcast. You are right where you need to be, and we are glad you're here. Come seek with us as we laugh at what we have known and find direction from what our curiosities demand we learn.
So we're heading into the Homeless Alliance's annual count, which is somewhat of a census.
It's called Point and Touch.
Point and Touch.
And that seems like it's a branch.
Oh, first of all, that seems
Homeless
kind of
Alliance.
rude.
That's a branch.
To point at somebody and then touch them. Jeez.
Yeah.
Harsh on the marketing purpose there.
And you think maybe they did it for the what do they call it, the anagram, where you can break your abbreviation down, but then that calls it PIT, Point and Touch.
I mean, I guess it's better than point and laugh.
Well, the other one is HOT, the Homeless Outreach Touch
Team.
Homeless
Outreach.
Yeah, so we're part of a HOT going out on a PIT. Sorry, that's my UPS ways.
Well, we're going out there to see. We're curious what is going on with what we're seeing is an increase in homeless population beyond what we're accustomed to. I think we're curious about it. We're trying to understand if there's a role that we play in it, how we can help it, what the cause is. I'm extremely curious about the cause, and I've been critical.
And the solution.
Yeah, I've been
even more so. Once
you
you find the real cause, maybe that's how you get the real solution.
So we're in the interaction is we're doing a census. So we're asking, where are you from? What was the cause of your most recent homeless event, or why are you homeless now? How long have you been homeless? And what this agency does is they accumulate all this data, and that helps with federal funding and state funding for homeless agencies, because they get a shot of what is the population in Oklahoma City right now. And they do it in these colder months because they know the homeless population has a closer proximity to shelters. So this is the homeless season.
It's where they have the highest density. They're just easier to count. It's easier to keep track of the feral folks who, for whatever reason, live homeless through their choice, through choices they've made, through choices society has put them in.
Well, those are all
we don't know. This is what we're here to find. Yeah.
That's it. And whether or not we find it in these short interactions, I think at the very least we're going to feel a little bit of the identity of who we're talking to.
And I ain't gonna lie, we might get into some funny, weird little situations.
Well, I mean, hopefully.
I would be remiss to say that I don't see an opportunity for interesting interactions. I mean, think about what we're doing here. So there's a beautiful premise to it, as you just laid out. We need to understand this plight, this thing that's going on in our society. And the only way we know how to get a handle on it is to go out and knock tents, wake people up 4 or 5 in the morning to ask them various questions about their state of life. And that's a very that adds for a lot of interesting interaction. I don't know how else to say.
Well, yeah, we're gonna see. It's 3:30 in the morning. I think we leave around 4, and so the idea is the greatest concentration of stability happens at this time in the morning. We're also going with bus passes and Amazon gift cards, and I mean,
we're spreading goodwill, so to speak.
There are plenty of we come in peace accoutrements.
A lot of $5 gift cards, like you said. But that was really about it. I mean, it's not like they've got some sort of grab bag we picked from. If they come and they spend 10 minutes being cordial with us on a few questions, then it's a $5. Most of it was $5 fast food card, I believe. I know Sonic was one that they mentioned.
So you're on a team that doesn't have a policeman with you, right?
No, that's right. Yeah. So when we got split up in teams, I thought that was interesting. You end up with a team that is assigned a police officer. You're going in.
Hot hand.
That's exactly right. Now the area I got is right around the homeless alliance.
Yeah,
it is. So they say there's going to be a high concentration, but I guess it's not the. I don't know what designates it as one being like, this is a bad homeless zone. Like, essentially, that's what they're saying. Like, oh, you guys are going into some of the nice ones. Myself, your zone might be a little rough.
I'm guessing it's proximity, or probably just what the police understand as a crime area. The area we're going into, there's a big encampment around a railroad track. And I think that's probably where we're going to spend the majority of our time. That's the one I'm most curious about, because it's interesting for me to see how these societies weave themselves together. And I think you have some lone wolves, but then you also have groups of 10, 15 people that are living, in a communal life in some way, shape, or form.
Well, right now we're speaking from ignorance. Like, you're about to go find out if that theory is true. We are really going to see, you just talked about it. What is the social structure like? I've heard in some of these, kind of like your favelas in Brazil, they get their own justice system, their own support system within their own small communities. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. You like to see people helping people, but you do hate to see that it has to find itself in that low of a form.
I think it's human nature to gather together to find fellowship, and no matter what your circumstances. I don't know whether or not we'll be able to feel that at 4 in the morning, but it's a curious question. I think we're doing this audit from 4 to 8 in the morning. And so I think we'll catch some early risers, and then I'm sure we're going to be knocking on some tents where somebody just went night-night. So it'll be interesting to see how welcome these approaches are. We're going out with trained professionals. I'm sure we're the least qualified in the room by far, having never done any of this.
Yeah, most of the ones in there had done this multiple years already. They worked for the organizations. It seems like that there's not just a lot of the general populace, like ourselves, so to speak, that find out about this and then actually even sign up for it.
Yeah, it just didn't seem to be like an intern activity. I didn't see a lot of fresh faces. I think that we're kind of stepping in also to a community that I'm a little curious about, which is the homeless outreach community. So I'm not as curious as I am about the homeless population, but I'm also curious about the people that have developed a passion around outreach. That's an interesting take as well.
And I think we feel a little bit of a passion towards it too. That's something else that brings us here. There's been an interest, a calling to this aspect of society that interests us, and I don't think we're the only ones. And this is what the people that have turned that interest way up do with their time. I feel like we might be around the sort of people that have figured out in life how to chase purpose instead of financial gain with the way they spend their time. Yeah. That's got to be a high concentration of people available in this kind of scenario.
Well, you're not waking up at, I got up at 2 o'clock after going to bed at 10. I mean, and all these people are doing a similar thing. You're not doing that if you're not passionate. I just don't.
It's like I said on the Purpose episode. If you woke up this morning with purpose. And mine was actually 2:25, which maybe I didn't quite give enough time this morning, but...
Good job, Homer.
I know. I'm usually the early one. This got me a little... Nonetheless, when I woke up today, there was a motivation. There was a purpose. It did not bother me one bit getting up.
I'll be honest. My first reaction when I woke up was I signed up for this. I don't want to go back to sleep. I was not that sure. No, I mean, now it's taken at least 5 loops of Daft Punk to get me revved up into some conscious state. But I'm expecting as soon as we get here, the energy that we're going to have from all these other people going out on a mission like this is probably going to build some contagious energy that I'm hoping to get a little pull on, to be honest with you, because I need some energy right now. So that's it. We want to give a little pregame going into the darkness on a real curious adventure that hopefully gives us some insight and we learn a little something.
Yeah, and once we get that information, these experiences, we can't wait to share it from the studio. All right. Well, welcome to Homeless Reflections. Here at Feral Minds, we took off on an endeavor that an opportunity that came in front of us that we've really been trying to embrace and participate in. Something getting in touch with our local homeless, going out and participating in a homeless outreach program. Did a little bit of discussion in the car on the way there, kind of giving some insights as to before and now. Man, fresh off of it, I still got the mud on my pants and my boots. Still got a smell that we can't get off.
Still tired. Still really running hard on coffee. But what was your take? How did that compare to what you expected?
There was, the expectation level was much higher. It seems, I think, whenever you drive by and you get this perception of there's a homeless person I see somewhere I've never seen before. Oh my goodness, they've overran where they were now, and now they're overflowing into new areas.
Yeah.
And so whenever I looked at it from that perspective, not diving into a point and touch kind of count, it made me feel like the homeless population has been just exploding because they are popping up in new places, it seems, all the time. Now, one thing I learned as we went out into this, as I say, where there was a lot less impact, a lot less interaction with homeless than I thought, was that you realize their camps get moved a lot. So you're not necessarily going with the same mentality I had that, okay, here's a new camp. All the other places I've seen are full, and now this camp exists. Yeah. What I found out when we started walking is they call it, it's almost amoebic, like an amoeba, the way they move their camps around based on complaints in an area that they need to come get them out of here. Yeah. So my area that we started off in, I thought it was just going to be nonstop talking with people. I thought they were just going to be everywhere because I had a familiarity with this area back at my UPS days. I delivered around here. I've seen some of these camps, and now we're talking 10, 12 years ago, and expecting that, like I said, and then an additional abundance. But as we started walking those areas, there were none of the camps that I'd seen before were there, and there was a lot more like homeless deterrent around. There were fences and barbed wires on top of them and caged in doors on every single building in this area. And so what I saw from this area of what I used to know and then now, they have forced the homeless population out of where they used to be, and they're more spreading out into the suburban areas. And that's what I think we all think that homelessness is growing, because you start seeing it's definitely more visible.
Yeah, and then that's the only conclusion we have as somebody who's not in tune with the population, the numbers. When we see more of it, when we see it on corners where we didn't see it, when we see a tent against a fence line where we didn't see it before, I think our natural assumption is things have gotten worse because it wasn't there. Why is it there now? That was a common theme that I heard, both amongst the homeless and the homeless outreach workers, that there is a lot of movement involved. Mm-hmm. And one of the camps that we went to, we were expecting a round of people that had been mildly hostile with dogs. The police officer that was with us was just warning us of the dogs. And we show up there, and it's completely turned over. The people that were once there are not there. And so I think there's a lot of fluidity in it. To me, one of the really, again, we got up at 2 a.m. to get down there at 4 to immerse ourselves with professional outreach workers, mm-hmm. people that are trained. You and I sat through a 30-minute, almost just how to work a tablet, slight nuance with how to engage with the homeless population. But, immediately as I told my family about what I was doing, there was a fear for my safety.
Mm-hmm. Even Tyler brought it up on the episode.
Yeah.
Are you taking any sort of defense?
Yeah. And again, I made the mistake of telling them a police officer was going to be with us, which escalated their concern in a weird way.
Oh, it's so bad you need a police officer? That's even worse.
But I'll say this, we didn't have one exchange that even resembled confrontation. Everybody that engaged with us, we announce ourselves outside of the camp in a pretty loud voice, and then you stand back and you wait to see who will come to you. So this idea that you and I had that we're going to be in there knocking on tents, and it doesn't play out like that.
No.
You stand from a safe distance, you announce who you are, and you announce your purpose. And it was my experience, about 90% of the people raised their hand and said, we would like to engage. And so we're taking a survey. And this survey is about
who are your no's first?
Who were my no's? There was one no right out the gate at we were probably a little after, probably 4:15, 4:20, so really early. and somebody knew the individual that was in there, and they used the name to draw his attention to the fact that we were there.
Mm-hmm. And you weren't there for
he
harm.
he just said, man, bless you guys, but not right now. And so we walked. Now, the area that I was working was all on the train tracks.
Mm-hmm.
There's large populations strewn out in kind of in the valleys or the bellies outside of the rise of a train track.
Mm-hmm.
And those areas are usually wooded, and I think they can get some cover from. So we predominantly walked up and down the tracks. And, sometimes you can't see where they are. Sometimes you're reliant on the outreach professional that's been there before to try to give you some insight. But the reception was warm.
Yeah, we had one guy sitting in a corner that he said, I just want to enjoy my buzz. That was the best no we got. Yeah.
You got to respect that.
Yeah, we did. Well, I guess, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily say that was the best one, because we had another one, which was a little presumptuous of us, just to assume you're walking down the road. But in some ways we were right. We asked him, are you homeless? And he said, yeah. And we said, well, do you have time for a few questions? And strangely enough, his response was, I'm late. I got to get to work.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't really get to go any further into that.
Yeah.
And as we go into what the questions were, I have to say that was one of my biggest takeaways, was how hard it was to not go beyond the questions.
Yeah.
As you're sitting there talking to a human being that's in a state that you really wish that you could assist with in whatever way. You got to remember that the best way that we are been taught through the programs that we're working through is to get these questions, to put them in a box, compartmentalize them so that they can get their help.
Yeah, and that's really what we're doing. We're doing this census that has a lot of questions around, why are you homeless? Do you have an underlying disability? Do you have a learning disability? And those feed grants that help fund these organizations, and that's the value of counting in the way we did. And like you, I had a little bit of time with a couple of people. I probably administered 5 surveys. And I would say out of those, 2 broke into some dialogue. Mm-hmm. And I basically let them lead the conversation, and I would engage.
I had one that was constantly in dialogue. But every once in a while I could get her to break into questions.
Okay. All right.
And that was, and they'd already, they already knew of her. I guess I'll say her name. But that she was one I really wanted to sit there and engage with the schizophrenic. Out of curiosity, because I can't describe her in any other way. There was a I don't even know if I can say the name of her imaginary friend, but she had the name of a friend. We'll call her Jennifer, and I could hear her referencing Jennifer quite a few times. Jennifer knows more about that. I don't know why Jennifer told me no, and I just could tell real quick on the questions that one of the reasons for hers was mental health. Yeah. Whether she was going to answer yes or no to do you have a mental health disorder, that was a box I was checking. Not to get too far ahead on the questions.
There was only one. I had one engagement with a guy who was very angry about somebody not giving him water. And one of the homeless workers told me that he's probably having a conversation with somebody who's not there. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have water. We had gift cards. We had bus passes.
She had questions like, what does not there look like? Is this someone that you see? Is this a voice in your head? Yeah. And that might be a whole psychological question. It is. I go to school and learn that, I suppose.
Well, and you don't, like, we're having such a quick interaction with them. Mm-hmm. We have no idea what brought them to this point. And now here we are, a pile of strangers in the middle of the night, and we're asking them questions that are intimate questions in nature.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. That's what I wanted to get into.
Why did you end up here? The assumption being that it's almost just kind of a disposition that you don't want to be there. And I think the majority of them felt that way. A lot of them were known within the outreach community, and a lot of them were checking on their cases. Like, have you heard about my housing case? Or where do I get this VA benefit? And with the way the groups were structured, there was a lot of knowledge. And thankfully, I didn't take away from that, because all I could do was mule a backpack around and hand out gift cards. But there was knowledge there that knew how to direct them. Are you a vet? Do you have mental health problems? Is there something with rent assistance that we can help you with?
Yeah, you're going down the questions with them, almost like you're hollering off a bingo thing.
Yeah.
Because we had one. Like, we had, I guess, what you would call hey, we can help you sort of bingo. So you start off, you're going down the questions. First, you got to ask them, have you already done this? You don't want to get your double count. Then you got to ask them what their name, when they're born. You ask them how many times they've been homeless, How long have you been homeless?
Are you chronically homeless? That's a new term I learned. So if you've been homeless more than, I believe it's 3 times or 4 times in 3 years or greater than 12 months, they label you chronically homeless. And that I ran across 2 of the surveys I did. One lady had been on the streets for 10 years. Another one had been on the streets for 15 years. And so when you ask that question, there's a long pause. And it's like this, almost this declaration of sin. Like, yeah, I've been out here 15 years.
Yeah, it's like you're forcing them to shine a light on
Yeah.
themselves and their situation with these questions.
Yeah.
But then they start getting, then you go to, are you male or female? What's your sexual orientation? And at first, when I hear about it, it's like, why am I wasting my time here asking these kind of questions? I don't know how this is going to help get to a root cause and therefore a solution to this. But as you start realizing when you keep going with them, are you on any sort of substance abuse? Are you physically disabled? Are you mentally disabled? Do you have a learning disability? Like, this is what we're walking out and waking someone up at 5 a.m. to ask them. And I learned afterwards, and in talking with the management over these programs, is how splintered their availability for help is. And almost what you see in each of these questions is one splintering of how you could get help.
Yeah.
And so we came across one, are you HIV positive or living with AIDS? And they were. And it was like, bing, oh, we've got a bingo here. The manager came over and he was even surprised, like, really, are you sure?
Well, yeah, by bingo, you mean
this is someone we know we can help, and we can help fast.
We have a condition that's well-funded.
Yes, well-funded and underutilized.
Yeah.
And it seems like some of the splinters on there, the ones that really are the
Was
root
that
cause
individual
of the
living
problem.
alone? Was he living alone?
He was by himself in there.
Okay.
So you kind of assume.
Yeah.
I don't know where anybody else would have been. And he had one that you could tell it had been there a while. Wow. Every once in a while you come up on one of those tents and you're like, this is permanent. They've got walk
built into the
paths.
tree.
They almost have landscaping. You've got a project he's working on out in the front. There are different levels of living in the homeless, which we can touch on that later. But,
but
just
get
getting through those questions and what you're out there for. Essentially, that's what we're out there trying to do. We're trying to go wake them up at 5 a.m, get them to answer questions so we can compartmentalize them into a help box.
Yeah.
And you hope you don't get in the box it's already too full.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. This guy who had HIV, well, he had a box that was not full of participants, but full of money. And the manager, they were excited to be able to help in that fashion. It just doesn't come up enough.
The ways you can live outdoors, man, there's a lot of variance in that.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are living in blue tarps. Some people are living in tents. One of the tents I visited was half tent, half cardboard. There was a guy that was living I couldn't understand how he laid down in it. It was about a 3 by 3 by 3 cube of old siding material. And I couldn't figure out how he laid down in it. And the homeless worker just said, the homeless worker said, you just don't know. From what you can see, standing 10 feet away in the dark, you don't know how many layers there are. You don't know if he's dug himself down in the trench. So there's just so many ways to exist out there. You're kind of seeing the human enterprise, even in a state that we're saying is undesirable. You still see the incredible ingenuity that goes on within these little encampments.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we found some. I'd heard a story about a guy who had shimmied up a power line and drug a power line down and it powered an entire homeless camp. You hear all kinds of stories about how they get creative with bringing heat inside their tents. And it reminded me a bit of some of my interaction with the prison system, in that there's always incredible inspiration and innovation in situations that are lacking. Like you put a human, the great adapters that we are, you can put us in almost any circumstance, and we'll grind out a solution that will feed our comfort in ways that you and I may not even understand.
Well, no, we
We
understand.
haven't lived at that in that level.
Well, here's a term I heard, and I was like, well, I completely understand this one, even though the two seem like an oxymoron. Yeah. The term homeless HOA. and that was used by one of the managers, one of the guys who visits these camps on a daily.
Figuratively, right? That's not a literal term.
Well, okay,
right?
So here was where he was referencing with. It was a little funny because they were sheepishly mentioning that in any sort of attempt to help, that they do hand out tents to the homeless, which, again, I said that's a little bit of a we'll get to that later on. But and they asked him, why do you need this tent? Which, I mean, for obvious, but their answer was, we have this encampment we'd really like to live in, but they won't let us in unless we have our own tent.
They were trying to upgrade.
Yeah, they were trying to upgrade into like a better neighborhood, which is a little bit indicative too of the way we were talking about in the pre-video about how we got split up into two different teams, and you had a police officer with yours. You were in what was known as a hot area. You were in a ghetto of the ghettos. I mean, not to just throw around terms like that,
we were in places that were known to be
you were in an
unstable.
unsafe area that people deem unsafe. Which, another thing I want to touch on. Really, at no point did I feel that there was a threat of attack or they were coming to get me.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that there's this hobophobia. I don't even know if that's a term, but the fear of homeless people. I don't know if it's called hobophobia, but
you think they're going to be violent?
Yeah. That
they're all drug crazed. They're going to come out the tent screaming, axe wielding, and come and getting you, right? And I didn't feel any of that.
No, and again, to my amazement, like you said, very few said no. So. And then once they started participating, it was just a normal conversation. When you could get them into the normalcy of the fact I'm asking you all these personal questions right now, you felt like you were in a doctor's office, just kind of doing a little check. They could slide into the human normalcy in a social situation if given the opportunity. Yeah. If you would treat them with some decency, they could reciprocate. They're not completely incapable. What I saw was a whole lot of people that in some ways just can't get out of their own head. They can't get past themselves. I don't want to blame everything on an individual in this and not to even try to touch too hard.
Do we even have the time? We didn't have the time
I don't
to
know,
engage
but
with them.
I just can't help it. I see it from both ends. You don't want individuals to even have to worry about making some of the choices that they do.
Yeah.
What scenarios are available to humans in this, but you don't even want them to have to make that choice. Yeah. But you have to also understand too that at some point there is the human that is there making the choice, and they've got to make a different one. Like, I wish there wasn't such this hard slide that you could go all the way down. I wish the net that caught the bottom of society was higher than it is. Yeah. If everything was running a little bit better, you would never see a human being living in these conditions. And that's some of my motivation, with what we're doing here. Nobody likes this. In whatever way, shape, or form, there's an aversion to seeing people live on that low of a level of society.
Well, we don't know what to do with it. I think we don't know whether or not to be scared of it. We don't know whether or not to blame it on the individual. Some of us, like you and I, that have done a little bit of both. Now we're kind of...
It's such a big problem. There's blame to go around. Yeah, it's not like there's one
But I passed
facet.
a lot of judgment, and so have you, at the people that are living outside. And we've had these little conclusions about why we think they do what they do, but we haven't done that from an arm's length. We haven't been close and felt the human, which is a big part of my motivation to actually go on this journey is to figure out, what is going on with the human in here in this circumstance. That he or she can't work himself or herself out of the circumstance. And I had one guy who it was a little eerie to me. He grew up not too far from where I grew up, which was also, a big misnomer of mine. I thought a lot of the homeless population was transient. They were coming in from other states, and every person I interviewed was from Oklahoma. They were local in some way, shape, or form. And this guy had lived a couple miles away from where I grew up. He was a little older than me, but he went to a high school I knew. We were talking about places where we both had played baseball, and it really ran through me. That was a real eye-opener. Like, man, it's a real human here.
How close are you to falling down that?
It's a real guy that has walked a path that deviated really hard from mine, but he did it in a very similar footstep. That really rung my bell. That made me think, wow, these are humans that never intended to end up where they were, and they've walked a life at some point in time that was very similar to yours. this individual himself said he was injured on the job, and that kind of led to his downfall. And he's now trying to reach out and get into a HUD program so he can get housing. He had a female living with him. And one other observation that I had, I think you're a big fan of monogamy. We've heard you go on and on about monogamy. The monogamous individuals or the couples that were out that we interviewed were much more stable. Like, I felt that thread.
Well, crisis can pull you
all the
together.
way through. Well, they were more. Their interaction was more stable with us. Their disposition was better. It seems like if you're not out there alone, you're going to do a little better, which is not really a big surprise. We know that's how it works in life. But, to a T, the ones that were a little bit more erratic, the ones that were a little more difficult to have that conversation with, they were alone. And I just saw that consistency with, if there was a male-female pairing there, they seemed to fare a little better with just their disposition.
Well,
now,
it speaks exactly.
That's a real small sample. Like, maybe I'm immature for that, but I saw that.
I'll
saw
take
that pattern.
I'll take it, and I will run with my monogamy statement that
We just do better
whenever
with-
you're
with the
taking
pair.
care of someone else, whenever you have an interest in a partner. Really, if you have the more people you have interest in outside of you, the more you're giving, the better your life gets.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get these people who are battling their own demons to understand that. It takes love. Love for one other person is the easiest way to break through that me, self identity. But what I see, you mentioned the word, kind of fighting their own demons. I went into this thinking that I was projecting my own demons, what I feel like might have led to any sort of cause that would have put me here. And that's what I was assuming what had happened to all of them. I really thought pretty much everybody was just mental or substance abuse. And then, therefore, I consider that mental health as well. Mm-hmm. And I really expected to see evidence of that. And that, again, is just me projecting what I feel like would have led me there and assuming that's what got everybody else there.
Yeah.
But different scenarios came up way more than that. Like you just mentioned, I didn't hear any of this, but that's a very interesting one, on-the-job injury. The ones that kept getting me were incarceration.
Yeah, no, I had a guy that had bounced out of prison. And and he said he didn't have a family member to live with, and that was years ago. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of ended up in a tent.
And then I was now I've caught a case. The guy, one of the ones of the that gave me that answer. Now I've got a felony, and you just start looking at that hole that through available societal choices and them making a little bit of the wrong choice, working two shovels in the same way, got them so far down. But we're seeing right now is that our society is better at getting people to that point than we are at getting them out.
Yeah.
Or more importantly, keeping them from getting to that point.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? If you just like being in prison for an extended stay, that becomes your default. And so once that's normalized, that's what you know. Mm-hmm. My guess is once you get to a certain level, when you've been outside for so long, that just becomes your normal. And I think, like you said, one of the greater ways to maybe stop this problem, slow the expansion of this problem, or just enhance our ability to help the problem, is to stop it before they become homeless.
Mm-hmm. The ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
It seems that way. But what we were predominantly seeing was outreach directed to people that are already homeless. But we heard that from some of the outreach workers that sometimes it's just not a program to help somebody, or they don't know about the program, or they come to you after they've already been outdoors for a number of years. And now we're kind of talking about, all right, we need to reinstitute you back into society. You have to figure out how to live under a roof, figure out how to live a 9-to-5 life, figure out how to turn the lights on, turn the lights off, bathe every day. I mean, if you've been outdoors for years on end, catching a shower once every couple of weeks, that becomes your default. And so I don't have any hint of a clue of how to solve this problem as a whole. But that did echo throughout a lot of the conversations I was having with the outreach workers. We try to stop it if we can before it becomes a case of homelessness.
Yes.
But it doesn't sound like there's an abundance of resource at that space between the lack of resource and maybe the individual knowing it's time to reach for help. Those are two areas where it seemed like, like you said, If we could move the help up the line and help them keep a roof over their head, instead of we're down now where they've lived outside for 3 or 4 years, and now we're giving them socks and gift cards.
It's a lot harder to pull them out of that hole.
I gotta believe it's harder to get them out of a default the way it would anybody else. Any default's going to grip you to a certain extent, and then you're going to have to find a new default, and you're going to have to find the energy to transition from the old to the new. And how do I do that without a massive support system? How do I do that if I've lived on the side of train tracks for 10, 15 years? It's going to be challenging, right?
Something that came up in ours that I thought was a beautiful mix-over of two different problems. And they said that they had a question when they were out one time, asking one of them, what could you think you could do to contribute to your homeless, to help to fix your homeless situation? Yeah. And he said, build more shelters. And and we're like, well, it's kind of counterintuitive. Like we're not trying to get more people sheltered. We're trying to get more people housed. Yeah. So that's a bizarre thing to think, like, how do we help that? And one of the things I think is shelters. And the correlation I thought that overlapped with that a little bit is that's like trying to fix crime by building more prisons.
Yeah.
So
it's after the fact.
At some point, yes, you've failed whenever you're a society sitting here trying to decide, can I build more shelters and more prisons? Yeah. There is the indicator that there's something that needs to go down before that. There's something in the legal process. There's something in the available help to people. There's something in the systemic choices that are available that's wrong whenever you're seeing that lopsidedness.
Yeah.
So the other one I think, just off the top of my head, my number 2 reason that they were on the streets was loss of family.
Okay.
And I put that to mean most of these were like a death of their mother was what they had said.
The shelter provider.
Yes, where their home was at one point. And you have to think that through death or whatever reason it might be, that would be a reason a lot of people are on the streets, is they've lost touch with their family.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine what anybody's situation has been through. I have had family members that I don't go seek out interaction with. So I'm probably just as guilty of this as perhaps anybody else.
Yeah.
But, if we really stuck together with our family, maybe if they wouldn't die whenever we're counting on them for a place to live, that's something else. Connection. If they can maintain a family connection in some way, shape, or form, that will enhance life. That's what I've learned through every bit of this. So you can put all sorts of facets and reasons, blaming the individual, the society, all the choices they have. But in the end, I believe it comes down to just a disconnection is what has you ending up in those sorts of scenarios that fall all the way through to the bottom of that net.
To counter that point, though, just for the individual's accountability, you want to position yourself where you're not reliant on somebody else.
Right. I'm not talking any sort of a dependent. Like, it's not like we all need to have dependents underneath us, and if you're not having someone depend on you, no, but it's just someone that you share life and experience with.
Yeah.
And once you do that, I believe that the weight of life doesn't get so heavy that you start feeling this despair that puts you into a mental state that I need to live on the streets.
Yeah.
That connection with people is what keeps people from getting into despair. It's amazing how, there's a Grateful Dead lyric that I'll butcher, but the answer to your solutions are through the eyes of the person right next to you.
Yeah.
And that, again, that's butchering it, but
it's the person that sees you.
That shows connection, and that's how we can all avoid sitting in any sort of a scenario like this at the bottom of society.
Another thing that I've found interesting, the conditions in the camps were all fairly similar. I guess they have a problem with trash removal. I heard that. One of the individuals I spoke to, she was asking for a 55-gallon drum so she could burn her trash.
Mm-hmm.
And the trash litters everything. There's a smell there that is intense. One of the camps that we went to stay warm, they were burning shopping carts. And so what they would do
is more that they'd load up a shopping cart and burn.
Well, the shopping cart would burn as well. And so
just melt down?
It would all melt down. So they would take like the ones I was seeing, and I don't know if Target is the shopping cart of choice, but it's plastic. So I'm guessing that Target shopping cart most likely burned a little hotter. Now, if you're burning a metal shopping cart, those just seem to get charred out, and I think you just burn whatever's in the shopping cart. But you get a Target cart, you get a plastic cart, I think you get an extra burn. So we've just come through an incredibly cold streak.
We got to remember that on our Target
with
versus
single
Walmart.
degree temperatures. And this camp had probably no less than 10 or 12 of these shopping carts that they burn them and then they just kind of push the remnants off to the side. And so when you walk in, the smell I first came across smelled like somebody was welding. It smelled like a fab shop. Just heavy burning metal scent. And you're puzzled by it. You don't know what am I smelling? It's an industrial smell. And then you connect it to they're not using 55-gallon drums. And I don't know if those are just hard to come by. Shopping carts are available at every store. But the shopping cart has become the 55-gallon drum. And they're lighting those on fire to keep themselves warm. And that smell combined with the burning kind of remnants of the rubble really it gripped me fairly hard. Like you understand at this time, you coming from your nice life in the burbs have now stepped into another existence. And it's an existence that you don't really comprehend. You're curious about it. I took some pictures, but I noticed that, like, internally, as I'm taking pictures, I feel this sense of guilt that I'm now trying to capture their misery so I can show it to the rest of the world. The outreach workers told me that's okay.
You got to bring light to the
showing
problem.
that you're participating, right?
Yes.
And you're showing the light. But at the same time, to have somebody stand in what we would consider just rubble conditions and ask them to pose for a photo didn't feel correct either. But I took photos because I think it is important that people see what these camps are like on the inside.
And what America's become.
A picture
this is essentially American now.
And this is, it's a sensory
everywhere.
experience. And so when I show you a picture that's inside of a camp, you get a feel. But you also can't smell it. You can't hear it. And it's a sensory
and there's
experience.
an energy around it. The despair,
you had the first couple of
helplessness.
camps that we went into, I had my head on a swivel. You don't know where the people are. You're walking through trails of debris. It reminded me a bit of a hoarder house. Like this, the debris that I saw and the way it was strewn about, I've seen this in houses that I've gone into. And I usually think it's a stripping process. So what you're seeing on the ground, you see a lot of bicycle parts. You'll see a lot of electronic parts.
I saw the
and so how they come across the parts or the items, I don't know. But they're stripping them apart for some type of value, and the remnants of the strip just hits the floor. And so you're walking through a disassembled kind of existence where they're grabbing anything they can from a trash can, or I noticed there was a lot of bartering going on. I heard that back and forth.
I had none of that.
I had one conversation with a lady who told me that when we pool our money to get food, we try to do that and then cook together when we can. Now, I didn't see any central kitchen in here. I'm taking the lady's word for it, but that one did have a sense of community. She told me there were 15 people living in that camp. And I asked, like, are more allowed to come? Do you ever need to remove
what are your
somebody?
HOA homeless rules?
And so she gave me a little bit of dialogue about disrupted dogs. I think dogs are a real X factor in the community because they bring chaos, they bring instability, but they also act as a companion to a guardian. And so if I found myself in a homeless state, getting a dog would be almost one of my first reaches because now I have protection. Now I can create a monogamous scenario between me and the dog. The dog's going to be there also to keep me warm. I mean, you lay next to a dog in a cold night, you're going to get some warmth off the dog.
Oh, I've had a dog give me hope.
Yeah,
in many
that's what
different
they
ways. Not necessarily warmth, but just that loving face. It
Yeah.
touches on what I was saying. Keep connection, even if it starts with a pet.
And that dog is not, even in that state, the dog's not depressed. The dog's still wagging his tail. The dog's still happy. And so there were so many different layers of existence. I wondered, like, why don't you tidy the place up a bit?
I've wondered that too.
Why do we have to live in this rubble circumstance here? This cannot help our mental health condition. But then I also remember, go back to my hoarder example the other day. sometimes what you see externally is just the mental health aspect played out in the physical form. And so as we're asking, going through this census and asking about mental health questions, they all said yes. I only have one guy.
Really?
I only have one guy out of 10 surveys that said, no, I deal with depression. And I was like, okay, we'll check that. And
I was surprised how many of them were very aware on it.
He refused it. He was like, no, I'm not. He goes, I don't have mental health issues. A lot of learning disabilities. That was also a question we had. Yeah, I had probably at least half of the people that I surveyed.
I was getting ready to want to ask.
Said they had a learning disability. And I didn't delve into it, and there wasn't a box to delve into it.
But nothing you could delve into.
It really made me curious about, is there literacy issues here? What is the disability? And that would be one that you'd want a little more time with. Again, we're not the people to do this. We're not social workers. That's
the psychologists are the ones that need to be out there.
Yeah,
that's what. And I went into the trash thing.
I don't know who exactly needs to be there.
Oh yeah, no,
I don't know.
It's multifaceted. But I was like you. I went into the trash thing and wondering, like, no matter whatever happened to me home, I'm going to pick this up.
Yeah.
But I did go into one camp that kind of made me rethink that. I was looking around, your typical deal. I hope I got a picture of it. If we do, we'll put it up. But then I look over and they have a city trash can there, and this city trash can is full, completely up to the brim. And so I kind of joked. I was like, oh, well, that's why it's on the ground. The trash can's full. They just need to take it out to the curb.
Yeah.
Which I get, kind of making light of it. But they can't. No one's going to come pick that trash up. These people are living in a different country right
Within
inside of our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no other way to put
it.
It's
a different life.
Yes. It's
right in front of us.
It's not... right here in America, there is a very un-American way of living, and a lot of people are doing it. And... I don't know what
it's weird when you think about how close you are in a comfortable life to how close somebody else can be in an uncomfortable life.
Well, like I've said, projecting what, my demons, I guarantee you I'm one divorce away from, not guarantee, but there's a good chance, looking at my trajectory, I stick with the alcohol and abuse and the experimental living that I was doing. If I don't ever learn from all that and break out of it, that's exactly, I was real close to that path.
I also think about, like, we go back to that camp where they had litter and debris and they were asking for help with the trash. They asked for a 55-gallon drum. And it made me wonder, right, are we just, do they want to clean this up? Would that solve the problem?
I don't think they want to.
Or is that an excuse?
You got to think some of the trash, some of the completely not caring about your surroundings has to come from this mentality that you don't want to stay there. Like, hopefully they thinking they got a foot out the door.
I don't know, man. Home is home.
Is that just me throwing too much optimism onto a despair?
I think you walk into an environment, and whatever culture is, you're probably going to adapt to that culture. And so if I'm walking in and I'm a new person at a camp, I'm just going to do what the camp's doing. I'm going to fall into the cultural norms. And if the norm is to throw your trash on the ground and blame the city for it, well, I'm going to do that, right?
I definitely give them more license than I do those homeowners that you go through in those areas, and they got beer cans littering their whole front yard. You've got an address.
Okay.
There's no reason.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, man. But
they get a little more license because nobody's coming to pick
you.
Theirs
Don't feel good. Like, let's go back to being a teenager. You get your room too dirty, you don't feel good. Why don't you feel good? Because you're living in what is a physical display of a disrupted mental state. And so you always feel better in a clean environment. And so to think about people that we're trying to get, back into some normalization of society, and they're living in, basically dump style conditions, right? There's trash everywhere. There's a smell that even as we got into my car, I'm having a hard time getting the smell off of me.
Yes.
And it's some of that is that burned metal smell. It's also like a burned metal meets kind of a burned plastic. It's a real unique smell. I'm having a hard time getting that out of my nose, to be quite honest with you. And I don't remember being in it. There was a lot of, hey, watch your step. There is no latrine, right?
You could see a couple I went to. You could see a sheet that would just be off in the middle of the side.
And that was the spot?
Yeah, I had two of them. I spotted. I was like, that has to be.
I was looking around. I couldn't figure out. I had no idea where people were going to the bathroom in the setup.
I found a couple.
So I'm assuming it's off down in the trees.
No, it's not that far
away from you.
No. It's like 4 feet from 3 tenths.
Wow.
So I still could be wrong on what it was, but that was my thought.
Yeah. I didn't catch
But
much
that's still pretty close.
smell in terms of feces or urine. I didn't catch a lot of that.
I didn't either. But there was no wind. It was a foggy day. That keeps scent down. Which is
now
probably
there's plenty of human smell. I mean, man, there was a couple that I interviewed from the tent, and so they didn't want to come out of their tent. And we're trying to accommodate. And they were nice people, and I crouched down to the tent, and the smell of two humans coming out, basically a 10-inch hole. As I took the survey, it was very intense, right? And you just realize like that's human smell there. That's real. And if you and I, if we got out of the right guard and we got out of the showers, eventually we would revert back to that smell. I don't know, man. How do we fix this? We don't. You and I don't. We don't have a solution here. I think
there's all kinds of solutions. There really are, because there's so many contributing problems.
I think more people need to be, one, engaged in an activity like this. When you go out on an outreach mission, one, there is no. I didn't feel any threat at all.
No.
And I originally thought there was going to be threat. And again, it's the boogeyman I don't know on the side of the road living in a way I don't understand, therefore he's a danger to me. I didn't feel that at all. It was 4 hours of my life. Yeah, I had to wake up yesterday in order to get this done today, but it was well worth it. It was well worth it for me to actually put name, face, dialogue to this condition that I've stared out through the side of my car window and held judgment on for the majority of my life. It also, I found it really enjoyable to be around the outreach workers. They all had a great attitude about this.
Well, I said going in, these are going to be people who found a way to fulfill purpose in life.
You were
as opposed
in their
to
passion.
Just chasing money.
That's
is
what you felt.
Yeah. They're not. You can't wash that off.
You're engaged in an
people to be
activity.
around.
You're engaged in an activity that is their passion. And that is always enjoyable. And I think that's available to people in any city. That we were working with the Homeless Alliance. Cities are going to have something equivalent all across the U.S. You can go out and experience this in a relatively safe manner, 4 hours of your life.
I highly recommend, especially if it's
more.
something that's concerning you. Right now, if you're one of the people who has some sort of animosity towards it, a sadness, if you feel like you just can't help but give them a little change when they're asking at the light, that's a calling to go investigate. See for yourself, experience it. And once we all kind of see and experience with it and find a connection there, I think you'll find solutions coming up out of it.
Everybody in those camps, they're alive. They're living.
Yes.
They're not killing each other.
And it's not that much of a different life than you do.
It's not going to hurt you to walk through it.
They still have HOA rules to deal with.
Evidently, yeah. You got to upgrade your
They're
tent
just
to get to
people
certain
like you and
spots.
I. They just have hit some hard times and didn't have some of the same safety nets that the rest of us do.
We need to go buy that lady a tent. We should. Yeah, we should absolutely do that. So
I just disagree with it because it goes against they need a home, not a tent.
Yeah,
they need a home, not a shelter. They need a home, not a prison.
What can you and I do? We can't give them a home. We can give them a tent.
No,
though, right?
I still don't really have much of a better answer for what we can do to stop. But I do. We
need more people
a better
looking at it.
compassion and a better understanding for the situation, and it gives me more hope. I feel better about it.
Yeah, I think if again, do I hand them the $5 bill out the window? Do I buy him a burger? What would you? So we'll wrap this up. With you and I have now been fairly intimate.
Yeah.
With people that are in challenging situations.
And as you're asking right now, I feel the question you got coming up, and I got the answer boiling.
Well, let's see if we can tag team this. So, what I don't know is what exactly, if you want to help, what do you do? How do you help?
Okay. What I feel like is you can only help what's right in front of you. So start with your immediate surroundings, whatever is already in your field of view.
I like that, yeah.
And what I felt myself doing today and what I just couldn't stop doing for these people when I was in front of them was handing them positivity. Hey, that's all right, man. You learned from that lesson. Keep taking steps forward towards a goal of a home, and it will happen. Yeah. I just wanted to instill in them their own belief in themselves and a possibility of hope.
You know how
and
hard,
if you can't hand out too much hope, so however you figure that you can give that to someone, for me, like I said, I got a pocket full of optimism, and that was my favorite thing to handle.
Yeah, it's free too.
Yeah,
it's free. You just got to stand and show your awareness and your presence. I think that there's probably somebody around you that needs help, that you may be aware of, you may not be aware of. Your senses are telling you need to help them.
Mm-hmm.
I go to the connections that we have around us that maybe don't have the family to support them,
Mm-hmm.
that may be looking for agencies and governments to stop somebody's downhill trajectory. Maybe that's not the answer. Maybe it's the humans around them
Yes.
that need to collectively support them and not just wait for the agency, right? Yeah, I got in trouble one time for feeding a homeless person is how it was labeled.
Yes.
And so around our building, we'll occasionally have a homeless population. And we had an event here one night, and we had some food left over, and I saw there was a homeless person. Not a big effort on my part. I walked out there and gave them some cookies and some water, and they left some of it. And I later kind of got scolded for feeding the homeless.
Yeah, it's like you had fed the animals. They were very objectifying
Yes,
towards these.
and-
Like, these are human beings.
And the answer to, in the feedback or the disposition of the statement was, we have agencies that handle or deal with the homeless. And I think that prescription, when we're going to allow agencies that we don't know or that we assume to be there, if every human believes that there's somebody else that's going to take care of it,
Nobody's
leave it
gonna do it.
alone. To me, that's the wrong position. The question I should be asking myself is, what can I do in this moment to help this person? And it may not be a lot, like you said. It might be a smile, it might be a glass of water, but that's what I have available to me. And I don't believe that ignoring it and allowing somebody else that you believe is going to help it to help the situation when you have your own personal authority, your own personal domain to try to impact this person in some way, shape, or form, maybe at the very least showing that you see them,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing their
A
existence.
little decency.
Yeah, and saying, listen, I see you there. How can I help you? Or maybe if I don't even ask that question, giving somebody some food never hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
And it also shows that you see them, and it also shows that you're aware of them and that they need some help, and that you recognize them as a human. We can all do that.
Yes.
We can do that. Instead of taking our gaze away from them, recognizing their existence, I think, is a very powerful thing that everybody's capable of doing, that doesn't require government funding,
Mm-hmm.
that an individual can do on their own.
Just to make the world a better place. Almost just look at them and smile.
Don't wait on somebody else
Any
to do
single person, nobody is below the need for kindness.
it. Absolutely.
And sometimes they're even right where they need to be.
Yeah. So
Hey.
great experience. I would encourage everybody out there, if you have an opportunity to work with a homeless outreach, go feel the experience yourself.
Get connected
Feel
with
the
your
experience.
community.
Yeah, and then drag your experience through it and look at how your life might be able to help some of the people that are in need of help now. How are my experiences or maybe my expertise and what I do for a living, how can that help an individual that is in need of help? We should all be asking ourselves questions along those lines.
If hurt people, well, what do healthy people do? And if you're a healthy person not helping, then it's just a world of hurt people hurting each other.
It's an obligation.
Somebody's got to be the healthy one
Yeah.
who's here to help.
Yeah,
I'm not afraid to help and step in that role.
yeah, thankfully.
All right, all right.
All right, all right. We would like to thank you for listening to the Feral Minds podcast. Hopefully we triggered some curiosity that will have you seeking more. Remember, your mind is meant to run. Slap some sneakers on that bad boy and take it around the block. If you'd like to connect with us or enlist our feral thoughts on a problem in your life, visit us on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, or at theferalminds.com. Also remember, our thought line is always available. 24/7, we don't even allow it to sleep. And we want to hear from you. That number is 866-340-3394. Again, that number is 866-340-3394. We look forward to hearing from you.